tantrums end with embarrassment, but some conclude fatally when people fueled by arrogance or refusal to listen breach boundaries that should never be tested. These 6 incidents demonstrate how Karen's behavior and reckless entitlement can spiral into irreversible, avoidable deaths. It was December 23, 2018, in a suburban shopping center outside Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Snowbanks lined the parking lot, and inside a big box grocery store, holiday crowds moved shoulder to shoulder beneath bright, fluorescent lights. Seasonal music played overhead as employees hurried to restock empty shelves. A temporary display near the meat department announced the last delivery of Christmas hams. Linda Carver was 48, unemployed, and living on credit while waiting for what she called the right opportunity. She prided herself on never settling, especially during holidays she believed rewarded those who acted decisively. Scarcity irritated her. Waiting felt like weakness. She believed taking more than needed was simply preparation. The ham freezer was already surrounded when she arrived. Only a few remained. A senior couple reached the case first and carefully selected one ham, then another, following posted limits. Linda pushed her cart forward and reached past them, pulling remaining hams from the shelf and stacking them into her cart in quick succession. Employees moved toward the area as raised voices drew attention. The seniors stepped back. Linda continued loading. The hams were large and frozen solid. Condensation and meltwater from repeated freezer openings had spread across the tile floor. Yellow caution cones had been placed nearby during restocking, but shoppers stepped around them to reach the display. Linda ignored them entirely. Her cart was now overloaded, with heavy hams stacked high and uneven. She grabbed one more from a restock crate and turned sharply, trying to maneuver away before anyone intervened. The front wheels rolled onto the damp tile and skidded sideways. The cart tipped. The sudden shift pulled her forward. She lost her footing and fell headfirst toward the end of the freezer aisle. Her temples struck the sharp metal corner of a low freezer unit. The sound of impact cut through the noise of the store. Her body collapsed beside the overturned cart as the frozen hams slid across the floor. Shoppers screamed and backed away. An employee called for help and emergency services while others tried to block the area. Linda did not move. Blood pooled quickly beneath her head. She showed no signs of regaining consciousness. Paramedics arrived within minutes and assessed her on the floor. She had no purposeful response and shallow, irregular breathing that stopped during evaluation. Resuscitation efforts were unsuccessful. She was pronounced dead at the scene as police secured the aisle and reviewed store footage. The medical examiner later reported a severe blunt force head injury. The impact caused a skull fracture and catastrophic brain trauma. Death occurred rapidly following the fall. Toxicology was negative. The manner of death was ruled accidental. Investigators noted no equipment malfunction. The floor was wet from normal freezer condensation. Warning cones were present. The cart had exceeded safe load balance. The incident resulted from rushing, overloading, and ignoring visible safety precautions. The store removed the remaining hams from the floor and closed the aisle for cleanup. The senior couple left quietly before police finished documenting the scene. Shopping resumed elsewhere in the store within the hour. Investigators noted that the item limits had been clearly posted, warning cones were visible, and staff had been moving in to intervene before the fall. None of those measures failed. Linda's cart, overloaded with more holiday hams than one household could use, was rolled away by employees, and the items were removed from the floor and discarded under store loss procedures. It was August 6, 2014, at Lake Lanier, Georgia. Late summer traffic crowded the public boat ramp, where wet, algae-slick concrete and idling engines turned small delays into conflict. Colleen Price was 44, a self-employed event decorator who worked weddings, reunions, and community festivals around northern Georgia. Her work required early access to shared venues, and she developed a habit of asserting priority loudly. Locals knew her for public disputes over parking and setup space. Online, she posted complaints accusing fishermen and boaters of blocking ramps and wasting time, which she believed she had claimed. She followed small business forums that encouraged standing ground in public spaces and framed confrontation as professionalism. Boat ramps are designed for brief loading and unloading, not parking or arguments. The slope, waterline, and constant vehicle movement leave little margin for error. Wet concrete reduces traction and unattended vehicles can roll easily if brakes are not fully engaged. Late that afternoon, Colleen arrived to find two fishermen finishing loading their boat. Frustrated by waiting, she drove her sedan halfway down the sloped ramp toward the water to confront them directly. She exited quickly, leaving the engine off, the transmission in neutral, and the parking brake only partially engaged. As she shouted and gestured, several bystanders noticed the car begin to creep backward. The concrete was wet near the waterline, and the car's rear tires lost friction. A man yelled for her to set the brake, but her attention stayed on the argument. The vehicle rolled faster, angling toward the lake. Colleen turned suddenly as the car gained speed, hesitated for a fraction of a second, then ran after it. She ran after the moving sedan, slipping once on algae slick concrete. Reaching the driver's door, she pulled it open and climbed halfway inside, one foot still on the ramp. Her hands fumbled for the brake pedal as the car continued downhill, momentum building beyond control. The sedan reached the water nose first. As it splashed in, Colleen lunged farther into the driver's seat, trying to reach the brake. The door swung inward behind her as the car continued rolling. Water surged through gaps and vents, soaking her legs and chest within seconds. The engine stalled. The car continued sinking, bubbles racing past the windows. Emergency crews arrived in 6 minutes. Divers entered the water and reached the submerged car, but rising water pressure prevented the doors from being opened. The vehicle was secured and pulled free, but Colleen was unresponsive and was pronounced dead at the scene as the ramp was closed. The medical examiner ruled the cause of death as drowning. Water entered her lungs, blocking oxygen exchange and leading to rapid loss of consciousness. No mechanical defects were found in the vehicle, and the parking brake was functional. The death was ruled accidental. Witness statements and video footage showed the incident began with Colleen driving onto the ramp to confront other users, leaving her car unsecured on a wet slope and attempting to re-enter it as it rolled toward the lake. County officials later installed wheel stops, repainted warning lines, and added signage clarifying that the ramp was not to be used for parking or confrontation. Investigators noted the safety measures addressed misuse of the ramp, not a failure of equipment or design. It was June 17, 2014, in Riverside, California. A clear afternoon sun hung over a mid-range apartment complex near the College District, where move-in trucks lined the curb and students passed through the courtyard with boxes and backpacks. The setting was routine, controlled, and safe, until a simple task was turned into a fatal shortcut. Heather Collins was 36, recently divorced, and living on child support and savings while raising 2 elementary-aged children. She ran a local Facebook group dedicated to publicly confronting and filming service workers she believed were incompetent. The group rewarded escalation, filmed arguments, raised voices, and visible dominance were treated as proof of authority. Neighbors described her as someone who refused to take small steps if a louder one felt faster. That afternoon, movers arrived to unload furniture from a shared truck. One couch became a problem. Heather wanted it angled differently through the doorway and believed the crew was ignoring her instructions. Instead of walking downstairs, a delay of less than a minute, she chose to control the situation from above. Standing on her 4th-floor balcony, she leaned over the railing, phone raised, shouting corrections downward while her children recorded from inside. Distance frustrated her. The workers below continued adjusting the couch, unable to hear her clearly. Heather responded by leaning farther out, exaggerating arm movements to demonstrate angles. The balcony railing was aluminum, bolted into concrete as a visual barrier, not a support. Warning placards were posted on the interior side, but she never turned around to see them. Rather than go downstairs, Heather stepped onto the lower horizontal bar of the railing to extend her reach. Witnesses later said it appeared deliberate, an attempt to loom closer while still filming. The bar bent instantly. The anchor points tore free with a sharp metallic snap. With her weight shifted outward, she had no chance to recover balance. She pitched forward, clearing the balcony entirely. Her phone slipped from her hand as her body rotated headfirst. She fell 4 stories onto the concrete walkway below. Her head struck first, followed by her shoulder and torso. The sound of impact echoed through the courtyard. Blood spread across the pavement. The movers froze. Tenants screamed. The children continued recording, not yet processing what had happened. Emergency services were called immediately. Paramedics arrived within minutes and found no signs of consciousness or breathing. The injuries were visibly catastrophic. No resuscitation was attempted. The coroner reported extensive skull fractures, massive brain trauma, and catastrophic upper cervical spine injury consistent with a head-first fall from height. Death was instantaneous. Toxicology was negative. The ruling was accidental. Investigators noted there was no equipment failure. The railing functioned as designed. The fall resulted entirely from misuse. The apartment complex replaced the damaged railing the same day and upgraded balcony barriers within 3 months as a precaution. Heather's Facebook group was deleted that evening. Her children were taken from the apartment by relatives before nightfall. The footage was collected by investigators and never released. The couch was delivered without further incident. It was July 22, 2015, in Clearwater Beach, Florida. Summer tourists crowded the resort marina as rental engines idled, fuel hung in the air, and offshore boat traffic sent unstable wakes rebounding through the dock lanes. Tara Whitman was 41, a dental office manager from Ohio on a company vacation with co-workers. At work, she was known for confidence that routinely crossed into defiance, often reframing refusal to listen as independence. She prided herself on being physically fit and repeatedly described herself as naturally athletic, believing that coordination and strength made formal instruction unnecessary. She followed lifestyle fitness influencers who promoted instinct over training and treated caution as weakness. Marina staff noted her impatience during paperwork and her visible irritation with safety reminders. Jet skis respond instantly to throttle input, reaching dangerous speed within seconds. Near docks, reflected wakes compress reaction time, and fixed structures leave no room to correct mistakes once acceleration begins. That afternoon's orientation was explicitly flagged as higher risk than usual. Boat traffic was heavy, and posted warnings advised reduced speed near launch zones due to wake interference. Instructors were required to maintain physical control during launch and provide step-by-step throttle guidance. Tara interrupted repeatedly, dismissing the instructions as excessive and unnecessary. When the instructor stepped onto the rear platform to demonstrate controlled acceleration, Tara raised her voice and told him to get off. Tourists nearby turned their phones toward the dock. Staff hesitated, balancing policy enforcement against the risk of escalation. The instructor stepped away, leaving Tara seated alone with the engine idling, still inside the confined dock corridor. Without clearance or countdown, Tara slammed the throttle instead of easing forward. The jet ski surged instantly from idle to high power. There was no open water to absorb the acceleration. She applied full throttle while still inside the confined dock corridor, where fixed structures left no margin for correction. Within seconds, the craft struck a reflected wake from a passing tour boat. The bow rose abruptly, momentarily lightening the hull and disrupting steering control. Tara's grip failed as the jet ski surged forward without directional correction. Momentum carried her directly toward the dock, chest exposed, body rigid. She slammed into a wooden piling at high speed. The impact crushed her chest inward against the fixed structure, collapsing ribs and compressing internal organs. The sound was blunt and final. She folded forward and dropped into the water without resistance as the jet ski drifted away. A lifeguard called 911 immediately, while another staff member pulled her toward the dock ladder. She showed no purposeful movement. Her skin faded rapidly as internal bleeding progressed unchecked. Emergency crews arrived in 6 minutes. CPR was attempted on the dock, but her chest wall was visibly unstable from multiple fractures, making effective compressions impossible. Despite oxygen, medication, and continued resuscitation during transport, she was pronounced dead shortly after arrival at the hospital. The medical examiner determined death resulted from catastrophic blunt force trauma. Multiple rib fractures, lung collapse, and major vascular damage caused rapid internal bleeding and oxygen deprivation. Brain injury followed within moments, eliminating any chance of survival. The death was ruled accidental. Toxicology showed no alcohol or drugs. Marina surveillance and bystander footage confirmed full throttle acceleration inside the dock zone. The resort suspended jet ski rentals that evening and later banned solo launches without instructor control. In the weeks that followed, Staff were retrained to enforce authority without exception during guest resistance. Additional signage clarified idle zone limits near docks. It was October 3, 2017, in Asheville, North Carolina. A renovated historic home sat on a narrow residential street, staged for short-term rental, quiet inside despite mounting frustration among its guests. Melissa Crane was 34 and worked in online retail returns for a national e-commerce platform. Her job revolved around disputes, chargebacks, and customer complaints, rewarding persistence and suspicion. Friends described her as meticulous to the point of fixation, someone who assumed dishonesty unless proven otherwise. She believed most listings were intentionally misleading and treated proving that belief as a personal victory. Outside of work, Melissa followed consumer protection forums and creators who exposed false advertising. She frequently filmed complaints and threatened reviews to force concessions. On the girls' weekend, she volunteered to handle the rental review. The house dated to the 1940s and had been cosmetically updated, but much of its exterior hardware remained original beneath fresh paint. That morning, Melissa fixated on the advertised mountain view. From the living room, only rooftops and trees were visible. The listing mentioned partial views from upper windows, but early fog and foliage blocked sightlines. Weather advisories noted reduced visibility until midday. Her friends suggested waiting or stepping outside. Melissa dismissed them, saying the claim was already false. She began recording on her phone, narrating her frustration. Instead of walking downstairs and outside, she opened a second-story window facing the street. Beneath it sat a window-mounted air conditioning unit, bolted into aging wood and visibly rusted. Warning labels advised against standing or leaning on the unit, but she ignored them. To prove the view was non-existent, Melissa climbed onto the windowsill and stepped directly onto the metal AC housing. Friends told her to stop, their voices audible on the recording. The unit groaned under her weight. Rather than step back, she leaned farther out, extending her phone to frame the shot, fully trusting a 40-year-old appliance to hold her. The unit tore free from the window frame. Screws ripped out of dry wood, and the heavy metal housing dropped outward. Melissa lost balance and fell with it, striking the AC unit as they both slammed into the concrete patio below. The impact crushed her midsection against the metal casing. She landed on her side, pinned partially beneath the unit. There was a brief gasp, then silence. Blood spread rapidly beneath her torso as internal injuries took effect. The phone skidded across the patio. Still recording. No one heard a scream. One guest ran outside while another called 911. Neighbors stepped onto porches. Melissa did not move. Her breathing did not resume. The AC unit lay twisted beside her, its power cord stretched taut across the patio. Emergency services arrived in 7 minutes. Paramedics assessed her and immediately identified catastrophic trauma. There was no pulse. Severe abdominal and chest injuries were visible. She was pronounced dead at the scene, and the area was secured. The medical examiner later reported massive blunt force trauma to the torso. Multiple ribs were fractured. Internal organs were ruptured, and severe internal bleeding occurred within seconds of impact. Oxygen loss and circulatory collapse followed rapidly, leaving no chance of recovery. The death was ruled accidental after review of footage, witness statements, and structural failure. Toxicology showed no alcohol or drugs. Investigators noted the air conditioning unit and window frame were never designed to support body weight and failed exactly as expected under load. The host removed all listing photos referencing views and suspended the property indefinitely. The rental platform required structural inspection before relisting. The girls' weekend ended that morning, with guests leaving separately. No review was ever posted, and the footage was never publicly released. It was August 11, 2022, on Interstate 75 near Dayton, Ohio. Midday traffic moved fast under a hazy sky, heat shimmering above the asphalt as construction narrowed lanes ahead. The shoulder thinned and widened unpredictably, littered with tire fragments and road debris. Vehicles passed within feet of one another, leaving no margin for error. Linda Harris was 47, a regional sales representative whose job kept her on the road across Ohio and neighboring states. Performance reviews cited persistence and drive, but also documented repeated complaints about aggressive behavior behind the wheel. She believed confrontation protected her position and often recorded disputes on her phone, treating documentation as leverage rather than warning. She followed productivity influencers who framed dominance as efficiency and control as professionalism. To her, highways were not shared systems, but competitive spaces. Modern interstates, however, allow little tolerance for error. At highway speeds, vehicles cover nearly 100 feet per second, and shoulders exist for emergencies, not confrontations. That afternoon, congestion increased as construction funneled traffic into fewer lanes. A warning sign advised caution for merging ahead. When another driver honked after she cut too closely, Linda reacted immediately. Instead of continuing forward, she braked hard and steered her SUV onto the shoulder, gravel spraying beneath the tires. She exited without checking mirrors, phone already raised. Walking backward toward the travel lane, she shouted while recording. Cars rushed past at 65 miles per hour, wind pulling at her clothes and distorting sound. One driver slowed and called 911 to report a pedestrian standing on the interstate shoulder. Linda stepped partially into the lane, gesturing toward traffic. Her attention stayed fixed on the driver she believed had wronged her. She did not see the semi-truck approaching in the right lane. As the truck passed, its extended side mirror struck Linda's shoulder. The impact knocked her off balance rather than throwing her. She staggered forward, lost her footing on the uneven pavement, and fell into the lane alongside the trailer. There was no time to recover. The rear wheels rolled over her torso as the truck continued forward before the driver could react. Vehicles braked violently. The semi stopped several hundred feet ahead. Drivers exited their cars in shock, some still recording. Linda lay motionless on the roadway. Emergency services were already en route. State troopers arrived within minutes, followed by paramedics. They found catastrophic injuries incompatible with life. No resuscitation was attempted, and the interstate was closed for investigation. The medical examiner later documented massive blunt force trauma. Internal organs were crushed, major blood vessels torn, and skeletal structures destroyed. Circulation and brain function ceased immediately. The death was ruled accidental. Dashcam footage from multiple vehicles confirmed the sequence of events. The trucking company cooperated fully, and the driver was not charged. Investigators emphasized that pedestrians on active highway shoulders face lethal forces within seconds, regardless of intent or visibility. The footage was later used in roadside safety training without identifying names. Linda's employer confirmed prior warnings related to confrontational conduct. Traffic resumed after several hours. The shoulder where she stopped showed no lasting mark, only skid patterns that faded as vehicles continued through the construction zone. Thanks for watching. If you like these stories, click here.